You fool! Warren is dead.
Part 4. What's in the bag? Tuesday evening, 22 Buckingham Street felt smaller than usual. Steve came in after 5, smelling of paint, and declared himself knackered before he'd even taken his boots off. They ate another invention involving pasta and whatever had been on offer at the shop. "You all right, love?" Steve asked as they ate. Well, as he ate. "You're quiet." "Just tired," she said. "Not too worried about this missing boy, are you?" Betsy just shook her head. She wasn't one to lie to her dad. So instead, if there was something on her mind that she wasn't ready to share, she just kept her mouth shut. After tea, they settled in front of the TV, the room lit more by the screen than the cheap supermarket lamp. The 6 o'clock news caught and held their attention. "Police were called to the Stockton Canal this afternoon," the presenter said, "after the discovery of a body believed to be that of a local man." The report cut to the canal, the very stretch Betsy had contemplated the day before, now cordoned off with blue and white tape. Police and paramedics swarmed the scene. The water behind them was oily black, the ice broken in several places. "Her body was recovered from the water," another voice said. "Sources describe it as mold, though there is no official confirmation at this time as to cause of death. Reports of a wild animal in the area are being tentatively linked to the incident." "Bloody hell," Steve muttered. "That's just up the road." Betsy was incapable of movement. She simply sat there, stunned. A grainy shot of the towpath filled the screen, a blurry shape under a blanket, a stretcher, a policeman's hand held up to ward off the camera. "Probably one of the poor sods who sleep down there," Steve said, more to himself than to her. Betsy had nothing to say. The cinema, the animals on the floor, the thin wrists of the bag lady, those horrible squelching sounds. "Police are appealing for witnesses," the presenter continued, but whatever he said went unheard. Betsy had completely zoned out. When the weather came on, Steve slapped his knees. "Right," he said. "That's enough misery for one night. You, bath, teeth, bed. Me, washing up, kettle, collapse. Let's get this show on the road." Betsy didn't protest. She went upstairs, ran the bath much too hot and far too deep, then immersed herself until the water cooled and her fingers wrinkled. Even in the steam, she couldn't stop seeing the bag lady's bony, claw-like hands. Finally, it was her dad's calling up the stairs that roused her into action. "Teeth, Bets," he said. She did as she was told and got into bed. Steve came in and sat on the edge, his shirt soaked through with pot water. "You sure you're all right?" he asked again, softer now. "If something's bothering you." She stared at the ceiling. A dead man in the canal, a pile of animals at the old cinema, a woman with too many bags and not enough face. "I'm just thinking," she said. "About what?" "Stuff." "Ah," he sang. "Stuff, that old chestnut. Well," he tapped her duvet. "Try not to think too hard about stuff right before bedtime, yeah?" She nodded timidly. "Look, if you're worried about all this missing kid business, just remember, there are grown-ups everywhere. Teachers, neighbors, police. They're not going to let it happen to you." Betsy looked at him. There had been a police car on Valley Road as they'd come home. There had been grown-ups on the towpath when they pulled that man from the canal. Grown-ups everywhere, and yet bad things were still happening. "Okay," she said, because he needed her to say it. "All right," he murmured. He bent and kissed her on the forehead. "Night, kid." He turned off the light, leaving the thin orange glow from the landing the job of illuminating a tiny room. She listened to his footsteps retreat, the creak of the stairs as he descended to satisfy the obvious craving. The house sighed around her, pipes ticking, the telly next door murmuring through the walls. Eventually, the landing light went off as well. Her room went from a dull orange to black. She didn't know how long she lay there before she heard it. At first, she thought it was part of a dream she'd not yet fallen into, a low drone that seemed to seep into the room rather than come from without.
What's in the bag?
The voice was low and strange. Every word extended as though speech didn't come naturally. It sounded again, louder this time.
What's in the bag?
Goosebumps riddled Betsy's skin. She shot up, heartbeat loud in her ears. It was coming from outside, from the front of the house, from the grass. She slid out of bed, eased her bedroom door open, and stepped onto the landing. The landing was all in shadow. The tiniest fraction of light floated up from downstairs. The TV was still on. She padded down quietly. Her dad was on the sofa, the TV muttering to itself in the corner. Some late-night talk show now. Two nobodies trading trivialities. "Dad?" she whispered. He snorted awake, blinking. She could smell the cigarette smoke on him. "Huh? You all right? Bad dream?" "Can you hear that?" she said. He frowned, listening. He reached for the remote and killed the TV. The silence that followed was thick.
What's in the bag?
The words drifted through the room, their source the silent world outside. Steve winced. "Did you hear that?" Betsy whispered. "Yeah," he managed. "Yeah, I did." They went together to the window. Steve twitched the curtain an inch. Betsy stood at his elbow, her eyes wide with a quiet terror. The street was an oblong shadow, tightly squeezed by dark, formless houses. The broken street lamp stood like a spectral obelisk. Further up, a functional lamp cast a splash of sodium orange, stopping short of the patch of grass and the no ball game sign. At first, Betsy saw nothing. Then her eyes adjusted. Something was moving, a shape low and hunched, out on the grass, sliding, dragging. It shuffled along the length of the green, from the direction of the bin sheds towards the centre, its pale silhouette just about visible.
What's in the bag?
Steve squinted. "Probably some drunk," he said under his breath. The shape moved on, away from the sign, drifting towards the row of houses opposite, towards 44. "Who lives there?" Betsy asked. "No idea," Steve said. "Never seen anyone go in or out. Probably empty." "It can't be empty," she stated. "The garden's too neat." Across the way, the shadow reached the low fence of 44's immaculate garden. It seemed to hesitate there, a dark smudge against the darker hedge. The voice came one last time, thinner now, as if travelling a considerable distance.
What's in the bag?
Then it was gone, melted into the night. Steve walked her back upstairs, this time leaving the landing light on. "Don't worry about it," he said. Asking her not to worry about things was becoming a habit he swore he'd break after Ellie. But change was difficult for a man in his 40s. Betsy nodded. She wanted to tell her dad about the cinema, the animals and the bag lady, but it was too late. Her immature mind was incapable of organizing her thoughts. Tiredness had her in its grip, and the time had come to yield to it. "Night, Dad," she said, yawning. "Night, love." Steve left her to it. Sleep claimed her almost immediately. Betsy was back in the cinema. Only it wasn't the cinema now. The seats had sunk into the floor, into a hollow crater of sorts. The carpet was gone. In its place, bones, piled high, curved and straight and broken, pale in the gloom. The screen was no longer a screen. It was a matted wall of plastic bags, thousands of them, expanding and contracting like artificial lungs. In the middle of the crater lay the man from the canal. She knew it was him, though she'd never seen his face. One arm lay across his chest. The other ended in a chewed stump. Above him, something moved. A shape, long and dark, slid along the curve of the wall, sinuous as smoke. It approached the prostrate figure, hovered above him in the gloom, then descended with the rapidity and urgency of a starved animal. The horrible squelching sounded again. Betsy tried to run, but her feet were stuck, caught by bony hands that held her fast.
What's in the bag?
She woke with a jolt, her heart battering her ribs. The room was dark. For a second she didn't know where she was, who she was. Then the familiar shape swam into focus. The flat-pack wardrobe, the paint-stained desk, the Lost Boys poster that had followed her from the old house. Under the duvet, Betsy's hands were shaking. Across the street, among the darkened row of houses, a strange voice whispered,
What's in the bag?